In February of this year, my sleep was interrupted by a presence that had no need for introductions. He didn't knock, he entered, and in that moment I knew. This was not a vision. This was an appointment. My name is Elijah Noam. There are things you see in the spirit that never leave you. They follow you into sleep. They linger in your breath when you speak. They ache behind your eyes when you try to return to normal. This is one of those things. I have held this in my bones for months, and every time I tried to silence it, I felt a hand tighten around my heart. I was warned, if I buried it, I would be buried with it. So, now I speak. Not because I want to, not because I feel qualified, but because I made a vow. If I lived through what I saw, I would tell it, all of it. What I am about to say will sound unbelievable, but it happened. Not in a church, not in a dream, but in the silence between two heartbeats. When the world around me vanished and eternity cracked open like a scroll of thunder, I saw him, not a painting, not a storybook, Christ, not the soft, gentle image we hang on our walls. I saw Jesus, the real one, the one whose voice bends stars, the one whose gaze burns the masks off your soul. And he told me, with sorrow in his voice, but fire in his eyes. What will happen to Christians before August 2025? I have never been the same, and after hearing this one, you won't be either. Even now as I speak, my hands are shaking, because I remember how he said it, slow, measured, like every word weighed eternity. Tell them what you saw. Warn them before the shaking begins. He didn't shout, he didn't explain, he commanded. And now I'm obeying, because time is running out. If you're watching this, and something inside you already knows I'm telling the truth, don't ignore that feeling. Don't wait for confirmation. Don't scroll. Don't look away and pretend you didn't hear, because the ones who turn away from this moment will remember it when it's too late. If you feel that cold heaviness in your chest right now, if your skin is crawling and your soul is listening harder than your ears, that's not fear. That's recognition. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to remember. You were meant to return. He called my name in the dark, and now I'm calling yours. Return to the fire, return before the flood. Before this happened, my life was quiet. I woke up each day to the sound of my neighbor's car pulling out of the driveway. The same coffee, the same Bible on the nightstand, mostly untouched. I had scriptures underlined, but never lived. I went to church. I raised my hands in worship. I whispered prayers in the dark, but I never waited for the silence after. I was saved, but I wasn't burning. I called myself Christian, but I lived in the shadows of conviction. I was the man who prayed without trembling, who read without weeping, who served without surrender. And I thought that was enough, until the stirrings began. Small at first, a strange tension in the air, like the sky holding its breath. I started waking up at 3:33 a.m. Always that same time, always with the same feeling, a heaviness in the room, not demonic, not frightening, just watching, waiting. I would lie there, staring at the ceiling, and I would feel something was thinning, like the veil between worlds was being pulled tight and ready to tear. I'd check the windows, I'd check my pulse, and still, there was no peace. People think spiritual encounters begin in bright flashes, but they often begin in silence that won't let you go. There were days I'd drive to work, sit at red lights, and feel like I was in the wrong timeline, like something inside me was screaming, but my mouth had forgotten how to speak its language. Even music started to sound off. Even laughter seemed rehearsed. I would open my Bible and feel nothing, no conviction, no joy, just paper. And yet, I couldn't stop carrying it, because some part of me knew one day I'd need it not as a book but as a weapon. That was the season I began losing taste for the things I used to love. Movies that once entertained me began to grieve me. Conversations felt hollow. Social media became noise, and silence began to speak louder than words. I'd feel it most when I was alone, that feeling that the heavens were holding a secret, and I was standing at the edge of it, refusing to cross. I told myself I was being dramatic, that it was just spiritual fatigue. But deep down, I knew I was being summoned to remember, summoned to return. But return to what? I couldn't answer that yet. I only knew this. My comfort was being dismantled. Slowly, quietly, precisely, as if heaven was erasing my illusions with surgical mercy. I remember the night it deepened. I was brushing my teeth, staring into my own eyes in the mirror. And suddenly, I felt like a stranger to myself, like the man looking back at me was wearing my skin, but not my calling. My hands shook, my knees went weak, and I heard it, faint but undeniable. Wake up. No thunder, no voice from the clouds, just that phrase carried like a warning inside my bloodstream. Wake up. That was when I knew something was coming. I didn't know what, I didn't know when, but I knew that if I didn't leave the shallow end of my faith, it would drown me. So I began praying again. Not pretty prayers, not poetic ones, just broken words spoken through clenched teeth and burning eyes. God, if you're still calling, I'm still listening. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of presence, full of grief, full of fire, waiting behind the curtain. That's when the pressure began. People started reaching out randomly. Old friends, strange messages, dreams they couldn't explain. One said, "I saw your face in a dream. You were standing in fire, but you weren't being burned." I didn't know what it meant then. But now, I do. He called my name in the dark. And now I call yours. Return to the fire, because before the encounter, before the voice, before the unraveling, there was this slow undoing. The Spirit didn't rip me from my comfort. He let it rot around me until I had no choice but to crawl out of the grave I made of routine. I was being emptied so something greater could enter. And even then, I didn't know the cost. Even then, I had no idea what I was about to see. It wasn't a car crash. It wasn't an illness. It wasn't the kind of death you can name or bury. It was silence. A silence so absolute, it swallowed the ticking clock, the hum of the world, even the sound of my own breath. A moment so still, it became a doorway. I was standing in my room, mid-step. I remember the dull light of the lamp, the open Bible on the floor, pages fanned like wings that had forgotten how to fly. And then, I wasn't there anymore. The air collapsed in on itself, time folded like linen, and every familiar thing, walls, ceiling, floor, peeled away as if reality had been a stage and the curtain had finally been torn down. My body remained behind. I knew this. I could feel the echo of my lungs back in that room, but I was somewhere else, weightless, empty, but full of light. Not the light of the sun, not the light of a dream, but a living light, one that moved like breath, one that searched me. I hovered, or maybe I floated, or maybe I simply existed. And then came the stillness, deeper than before, the kind of stillness that holds judgment and mercy in the same hand. I remember whispering, though I had no mouth, "What is this?" The moment I asked, everything broke open, like heaven inhaled and exhaled me into itself. I was taken, not yanked, not forced, but drawn, as if I had always belonged to where I was going, but had somehow forgotten the way back. And then the darkness came, not evil, not demonic, just pure, ancient void, the kind that existed before the beginning, the kind Scripture calls formless and empty. I passed through it, and in that blackness I felt every sin I ever ignored, every compromise I justified, every moment I said later when the Spirit whispered now. It clung to me like smoke, not to condemn, but to reveal. There, in that sacred dark, I saw the version of myself I had hidden, even from my prayers. And still, I was not alone. There was presence, massive, patient, more real than I had ever been. It didn't speak. It knew me. My name, my thoughts, my regrets. I tried to hide, but there was nowhere to go. And then I saw light, not approaching, not shining, but revealing. Like it had been there the whole time, waiting for me to be still enough to see it. It didn't blind me, it welcomed me. And from within that light a whisper rose, like the first note of creation. You are not ready. Not a voice in my ear, a voice inside the marrow of me, a voice that spoke into the places I had closed off with theology and fear. I should have wept, but I couldn't. I wasn't sad. I was undone. Every mask burned, every excuse vanished. Every part of me that had called itself Christian, without ever surrendering, was exposed. I wasn't being punished. I was being purified. And I knew this wasn't about death. It was about awakening. It was the crisis of the soul, when the soul realizes it has played it safe for too long. It was the divine interruption that no sermon had ever prepared me for. I had been summoned, not to be applauded, not to be scolded, but to be shown. And I could feel it beginning to stir. The revelation. The reason I had been called into the realm between breath and fire. But before the vision, before the unveiling, there was the breaking. I was being stripped down to truth. And truth does not flatter. It frees, but only after it cuts. He called my name in the dark. And now I call yours. Return to the fire, because there is a death that leads to life, and there is a stillness that is not the end, but the threshold. And on the other side of that threshold, I would see him, and what he showed me would change everything. The realm I entered was not heaven as I expected. It was not streets of gold. It was not choirs of angels flanking a jeweled throne. It was not what the books said, or the paintings imagined, or the songs tried to describe. No, this place was preparation. I saw no gates, no pearly walls, no welcome, just endless stillness, weightless, wide, waiting. And yet, I felt it. I was not alone. Something vast was watching, not with menace, but with memory, as if the eyes on me had seen me before I was formed and remembered what I had forgotten. The air shimmered, but it wasn't air. It was presence. Every breath was holy. Every sound was a song that hadn't yet been sung. There was music, but not made of notes. It was more like water, rippling through the spirit. Melodies not heard with ears, but with the soul. The light didn't shine. It sang. It hummed the truth of God into every corner of this waiting realm. It was not harsh, it was not blinding, it was warm. The kind of warmth that remembers your name when everyone else forgets it. I floated, or maybe I walked. I could not tell. Because in this place, motion felt like obedience, and direction came not from the feet but from the soul's surrender. Then I saw them, others, figures not clothed in robes, but wrapped in remembrance. Some were praying, with faces buried in unseen altars, as if pleading for those still on earth. Some were waiting, still silent, like guards before a storm. And some were weeping, but not with sorrow, with knowledge. The kind of weeping that only comes when you've seen what's coming and know how few are ready. Their tears did not fall, they floated, suspended like dew on eternity's edge, each one a cry, a warning, a memory. I tried to speak, but speech was too shallow. I tried to think, but thought collapsed under glory. It felt like eternity had paused, like the whole of creation was holding its breath, because something terrible was about to begin, something no man could reverse, something no sermon could soften. I wasn't there to admire, I wasn't there to explore. I was brought here to see it first, to see what the world would soon face, to see what the church had long ignored, to see what comfort had hidden and convenience had silenced. I was being shown the stage before the curtain would rise. The trembling had only begun, and behind it all, behind the music, behind the stillness, behind the unseen gaze, I felt him, not in form, but in fullness. not in distance but in dominion. Christ, the center, the flame behind the veil, the lion who waits until the silence is complete. He called my name in the dark, and now I call yours. Return to the fire, because the clock has already moved, and the world as we know it is standing on borrowed breath. Then I saw him, not from afar, not through a veil, not in a dream. I saw him. He didn't descend, he didn't emerge, he simply was, present, eternal, unshakable. And suddenly, everything else faded. The music stilled, the light bowed. Even time, which had already stopped, seemed to kneel before him. He stood, not walking, not hovering, just being. The essence of holy, the center of all things, seen and unseen. The fire that burns without smoke, the voice that thundered the stars into place, yet now stood in silence before me. His eyes, oh God, his eyes. They didn't look at me. They read me. Pages I thought I'd burned, wounds I thought I'd hidden, shames I thought were forgotten. They surfaced beneath his gaze like oil on water, and yet there was no accusation, only a sorrow so deep it broke me more than wrath ever could. His eyes knew everything, and still, they stayed. His hands, they still bore the scars. They weren't faded, they weren't cleaned up by glory. They were open, split, burning with memory. I fell, not because I wanted to, because the soul cannot stand in front of the one who made it. And he said nothing, for a long while, because his silence was instruction. A silence that stripped me, that revealed every idol I'd ever kissed, every lie I'd ever called truth. In that stillness, my excuses melted, my theology unraveled, my self-righteousness shattered like thin glass. And when he finally spoke, the words didn't echo, they embedded. They are not ready. Not the world, not the church, not even me. Tell them what you see. Not what you think, not what you fear, what you see. And then he said it, a phrase that still rings inside my bones. Before August, the shaking begins. He didn't blink, he didn't flinch, he just declared it, not as a threat, but as a truth already in motion. I trembled, I wept, and I whispered, why me? Why this soul of contradictions? Why this tongue that has known both praise and profanity? Why this vessel still cracked with compromise? And he replied, his voice like wind through burning cedar, because you once were blind, and now you must warn the sleeping. Warn them that the veil is thinning, that mercy still lingers, but not forever. Warn them that the fire is coming to test every house, every pulpit, every platform, every heart. Warn them that the shaking will not stop at borders or denominations or reputations. It will touch all. Because judgment must begin at the house that bears his name. I stood, not by strength but by command, and even as I stood in that holy realm, I knew this was not the reward, it was the reckoning. I had been summoned, not for comfort, but for commission. He called my name in the dark. Now I call yours. Return to the fire. Because this story is not fiction. It is a warning wrapped in love. It is a whisper before the wind becomes a whirlwind. And if this story is reaching you now, know this, it is no accident. If your heart is racing, if your spirit is restless, your soul already knows. He is calling you too. Subscribe, because the unprepared will be devoured by what's coming. And if you don't believe, then write it. Write it in the comments, write your disbelief. So when it happens, your own words will testify against your silence. He called my name in the dark, and I obeyed. Now I ask you, will you? Because the shaking has already begun. He called my name in the dark, and I followed him into the silence. The stillness around us pulsed with something unspeakable, like the hush before a holy storm. Then he lifted his hand, and without words, he showed me. It wasn't a map of nations. It wasn't lines and flags. It was a map of Kusosmaigse, a living web of light and shadows, flickering, some dim, some bright, some extinguished completely. I could see cities, but not by population or wealth, but by worship, by the condition of hearts. Jesus showed me a map, not of countries but of consecration, and what I saw broke me. He revealed churches, once ablaze with glory, now cold as stone, structures still standing but hollow, echoing with the memory of what once was. I saw cathedrals full of people, but heaven was absent. I saw temples with their lights on, but no fire inside. They were chosen, but they had grown comfortable, and in their comfort, they drifted. Then I saw the pulpits, pastors, clothed in robes and rehearsed charisma, speaking with honeyed tongues, entertaining the people, performing for applause. And yet, above them, unseen by their eyes, demons circled the pews, wolves in the sanctuary, mockers in the choir loft, altars hollowed out by ambition. Jesus didn't speak, but my spirit screamed. I wanted to look away, but I had made a vow. If I lived, I would tell it. So I kept watching. Then I saw the people, the Christians, the ones who knew his name, but not his heart. They were hosting spirits in the name of entertainment, welcoming darkness in flickering screens, in lyrics soaked with poison, in rituals disguised as fun. And they called it grace. But heaven called it grief. Then, he whispered, not into my ears, but into the marrow of my bones. Before August 2025, their covering will lift. The enemy will gain permission. Permission, not an invasion, not chaos run wild, but a release from restraint. I asked, trembling, permission for what? And the answer came, slow, heavy, final. To sift them, to test the ones who call me Lord and but live like strangers. My soul shattered, because I knew what sifting meant. It wasn't punishment, it wasn't proof, Fabia. Proof of love, proof of loyalty, proof of fire-tested faith. They have 12 months to repent, and he said, then the flood begins, not of water, but of fire. Not destruction, but separation. Separation. Between light and shadow, between the wheat and the imitation, between those who sing out of love and those who perform out of habit. They were chosen. But they had forgotten why. I saw cities, in which only a few candles remained. I saw homes, where children glowed with glory, but their parents were drowning in compromise. I saw leaders who once wept in the secret place, now preaching sermons downloaded from popularity, not downloaded from heaven. And Jesus wept, not with anger, but with the ache of a groom watching his bride give her purity to strangers. He turned to me again, and though his voice was soft, its weight crushed the air around us. Warn them, tell them, this isn't about punishment, it's about purification. The refining fire must come, because love that does not purify is not love at all, and the world, this trembling, groaning world, must be shaken before it can be restored. The shaking is mercy, the shaking is invitation, the shaking is a door back to the altar. Return to the fire. I saw names, not all, but enough to wound me. Some I admired, some I followed, some I loved. But in this realm, reputation is dust. Only obedience speaks, only purity shines. They were chosen, but they grew numb, distracted, tired of waiting. And so they turned inward, feasting on pleasures that tasted sweet but rotted the soul. The Lord is not mocked, and his silence is not permission, it is patience, but patience has a clock, and that clock is ticking. It ticks in pulpits, it ticks in bedrooms, it ticks beneath your heartbeat, even now. They have 12 months to repent. 1 year of mercy, 1 year of returning, 1 year of choosing fire over fame, consecration over convenience, and then the flood. Not of water, but of fire. A fire that reveals, a fire that separates, a fire that exposes what we truly worship. The world must be shaken before it can be restored. He called my name in the dark, and I carry this wound not for pain, but for purpose. So I say it again, not as a preacher, not as a prophet, but as a witness. Return to the fire, before the fire returns to you. He called my name in the dark, and I answered, not with words, but with tears. Because once you've seen behind the veil, you can never again pretend you didn't. It came not as a roar, but as a trembling, not as a trumpet, but as a fracture in the silence. And then I saw it, the shaking. It began quietly, like wind slipping beneath the doors of churches. It began with sermons that would not land, with altars that people no longer approached, with worship songs sung louder, but with less presence. Then louder, like thunder crawling through the bones of nations. Buildings collapsed, not all of them physical. The idols we named ministries, the movements we called revivals, but never repented, the platforms built on personality. They buckled, and I wept, because it had begun. But amid the collapse, I saw a strange, holy beauty. A church burned down, but its members were still there, singing in the ashes, with hands lifted, with voices cracked, with faces streaked with soot and glory. They had lost everything, but found him again, and the Spirit whispered through my bones, "This is the remnant, this is the awakening." I saw believers walking away from stadiums where lights once replaced glory and microphones became golden calves. They were returning to upper rooms, cramped, humble places, spaces of surrender, no spotlight, just oil. Return to the fire. I saw homes, tiny, ordinary homes, lit from within like burning bushes, families on their knees, mothers praying in tongues, fathers repenting aloud, children laying hands on their parents, Bibles marked with tears. Not just read, but wept over. I saw men confessing, women releasing offense, chains breaking not in conferences, but in kitchens. And in those places, the fire returned. The same fire that once hovered over heads at Pentecost now hovered again. I saw rural towns glowing like ancient cities. I saw youth carrying wooden crosses through highways. I saw teenagers deleting fame for consecration. I saw deliverance in parks, worship in alleyways, holy weeping in schools. He showed me a remnant, a hidden bride, burning, unseen, unwavering. And he said, "These will rise, these will carry my fire. These will not fall when the shaking grows. These will rebuild the ruins. These are the ones I have kept, in caves of obedience." And then, the sky broke open, like parchment torn in the hands of eternity. The clouds parted, and across the firmament, I saw it. August 2025, carved in fire, like a banner, like a trumpet, like a verdict. Time, branded by God. And I knew everything would change. He spoke again, not loud, not angry, but with a weight that bent time around his words. "Mark this season, for it shall divide the sheep from the goats. It shall separate the lovers from the liars, the yielded from the religious, the bride from the crowd." And I fell, not physically, but inwardly. Collapsed into the realization that everything we called church was about to be redefined. This isn't judgment, this is jealousy. Holy, burning, relentless jealousy, for a bride who forgot her first love. He called my name in the dark, and I said yes, not to comfort, but to obedience. So now I speak to you, not with charisma, not for likes or shares or trends, but because I saw it. And I made a vow. There is a remnant rising. There is a storm of glory coming. There is a holy line being drawn, and you are standing on it. Return to the fire, before it returns without mercy. Not all who speak in tongues will stand. Not all who lead will last. Not all who gather will rise, but those who kneel, those who tremble at his word, those who carry oil in secret. They will shine, and the world will see them burn and say, "These have been with him. The shaking will come, but so will the awakening. And August 2025 will not be remembered for politics or pandemics or war. It will be remembered as the month when heaven drew its sword and said, enough. Enough pretending, enough playing church, enough blending with Babylon. This is the hour, this is the fire, this is the final call. He called my name in the dark, and I was never the same. So now I call yours. Return to the fire, before it returns to you. He called my name in the dark, and I answered, even though it cost me everything, because when you see what I've seen, when eternity opens its mouth and breathes fire into your lungs, you cannot go back to sleep. I woke up screaming. The room was thick with silence, but something ancient was watching. I turned to the clock. 4 a.m. The hour of nothingness, the hour of unveiling. I sat up, drenched in sweat, trembling, heart pounding like judgment at the door. The visions still burned behind my eyes, the sound of heaven splitting time, the weight of August 2025 still pressing down on my chest. I wanted to forget. I begged to forget. But when God brands you with prophecy, He removes your right to be silent. So I spoke, to the ones closest to me. I poured it out like sacred wine into cracked vessels. I shared it with love, with urgency, with shaking hands. They smiled, or nodded, or changed the subject. And some laughed, not mockingly, worse, casually, as if the warning of heaven was just another story. But it wasn't a story, it was a summons, it was a sword. And then the resistance began, not from the world, but from the shadows that live in silence, from the places where spiritual warfare hides in plain sight. My devices began to glitch, files disappeared, audio distorted, messages refused to send. Darkness hovered in the corners of my room, not imagined. Felt. A presence that curled like smoke around my bedframe. Then came the sleep paralysis. Nights where I woke but couldn't move. Eyes wide open, mouth sealed. A pressure on my chest like hands forged in shadow. I couldn't scream, I couldn't breathe, but through the paralysis I heard Him. Still, small, strong. They will try to silence you, but keep speaking. And so I did. Even when my voice trembled, even when my joy cracked under the weight of isolation, even when the attacks came from places I thought were safe. I lost friends, some quietly, some with words that pierced deeper than knives. I lost comfort, sleep, appetite, but I didn't lose the fire, because the fire was not mine to lose. It had been entrusted, it had been commanded to remain. He called my name in the dark, and every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the echo of His whisper. Speak, even if they stone you with their silence. I learned then, the enemy doesn't fight what isn't a threat. So if you feel the pressure, if this message cuts through your comfort like a blade, it's meant to. It's a surgical strike from heaven to awaken the sleeping bride. You're not being offended, you're being called out. If you feel the urge to click away, pause. That's not boredom, that's warfare. That's your soul flinching under conviction. Subscribe. Before you talk yourself out of obedience, don't wait. Don't reason your way into delay. Hell loves the language of postponement, and if your heart still resists, if you're clutching your pride like a pillow, then go to the comments and confess your resistance. Write it out. Expose it. Don't let your silence bury you. Do it while you still can. Because I promise you, there's a shaking coming that won't ask for your permission. He called my name in the dark, and now I call yours. Return to the fire. Return before the veil closes. Return before silence becomes your sentence. Return before the resistance becomes your religion. Because in this hour, neutrality is treason. He's not coming back for spectators. He's coming for those who burned, who wept, who obeyed, even when it cost them everything. I lost peace. But I found the flame, and I will not let it go. Even if I must walk alone, even if the darkness hisses at my windows every night, even if no one else believes me, because I made a vow, and vows aren't erased by mockery. He called my name in the dark, and I was never the same, so now I call yours. Return to the fire. He called my name in the dark, and I cannot forget the weight in his voice. It was not loud, it was not angry, it was final. Like thunder wrapped in mercy, like a door closing gently, but for the last time. Jesus said clearly, "There is a war for your soul, and neutrality is surrender." He did not soften the message. He did not decorate it with pleasantries. He burned it into my bones. This is not the kind of war you can escape by hiding, not the kind you can ignore by keeping busy. This war finds you. It walks into your living room through your distractions. It lays in your bed at night and whispers through your comfort. And he showed me what's coming. Before August 2025, many will fall. Not by sword, not by bullets, not by prisons, but by pleasure, by buddies, by the soft fog of compromise, by the slow seduction of a Christianity without Christ. The enemy will not storm their doors. He will lull them to sleep. He will feed them candy-coated sermons and give them screens instead of scripture. He will teach them how to shout in church, but not weep in secret. They will not fall from fear. They will fall from comfort. And their fall will be loud in heaven. But then, he showed me the other side. A vision like oil pouring over my eyes. He said, if they cling to me, if they bury their face in my word, if they walk away from what numbs them and sit at my feet again, I will seal them, I will anoint them, and they will stand when others collapse. He called my name in the dark, and now I call yours, you. Watching this right now, you were chosen to hear it. Not because you're strong, not because you're sinless, not because you're spiritual, but because your heart, though faint, though fragile, is still soft. You still feel something stir when truth is spoken. You still flinch when the Holy Spirit brushes past your ribs. You still cry when no one's watching. You still hope that maybe you haven't missed it yet. You haven't. But the window is closing, the sand is falling, the veil is thinning. Don't waste this window. Don't let the lullaby of this world rock you back to spiritual sleep. Don't exchange the fire for a feeling. Don't scroll away from the voice calling your name in the dark. He's calling you back, not to a platform, not to a performance, not to religion, but to the secret place, to the broken altar, to the pages of the word that still bleed with life, to the cross that still screams mercy through blood. Return to the fire. Return before it's too late. Return before your silence becomes your signature. You think you have time. But there are people watching this who will not live to see August 2025, and some of them will still refuse to click subscribe, not because they don't believe, but because pride whispers louder than truth. Don't let that be you. Click subscribe as a declaration, as a vow, as a line in the sand. Let it be your confession before heaven and hell. Let it be your cry. I won't go back to sleep. And if you won't, if your fingers stay still and your heart hardens, then leave your excuse in the comments. Write it out. Own it. Let eternity judge between us. But you have heard, and you are without excuse. He called my name in the dark. Now I have obeyed. Now I have spoken. Now the blood is no longer on my hands. Return to the fire. Let it burn away the noise. Let it cleanse what religion hid. Let it melt the idols you didn't know you were bowing to. Return to the fire. Because when the shaking comes, when the silence breaks, when August 2025 unfolds, only the sealed will stand. You were born for this hour. You were marked for this season. But you must choose, return to the fire, or be consumed by it. He called my name in the dark, and I said yes, not because I was ready, but because I was ruined. Ruined by what I saw, ruined by what I heard, ruined by the taste of eternity that still lingers in my mouth like fire on the tongue. This isn't just my story. It's yours, you know it. Even if you haven't said it aloud, you've felt the tremors, you've seen the shadows stretch longer, you've watched the world tilt slowly towards something ancient and final. You've noticed it. The silence in the spirit realm that feels like the inhale before the trumpet, the shaking in your heart that no sermon can soothe, the sense that something is about to break, wide open. This is the final stretch before the flood. The rain hasn't started yet, but the clouds are forming. The ark is open, the warnings have been spoken, and the clock is not merciful. When the veil lifts, and it will lift, you will either be standing on the rock or swept away with the sand. There will be no neutral ground, there will be no negotiation. You won't have time to choose later, because when the trumpet sounds, it won't be a beginning, it will be the end of choosing. Return to the fire, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way you'll survive what's coming. Return to the fire, because lukewarm love won't outlast the storm, because borrowed faith won't open locked doors, because spiritual laziness is no match for demonic boldness. You think you'll be ready when it matters? No, you'll only rise to the level of your devotion. Not your intentions, not your feelings, not your upbringing, but your upburning. Return to the Gospels, return to Christ, return to the fire. Open the pages again, read until the ink becomes breath, pray until the silence breaks, repent until the chains fall off, fast until the hunger for Him returns. You were not created for this world's applause. You were not saved to sit in safety. You were not chosen to live distracted. You were called by name, in the dark, and whether you heard Him faintly or clearly, you heard. So I must ask, will you rise, or will you remain asleep? You think you have tomorrow, but prophecy doesn't wait for your comfort, and truth doesn't slow down for the disinterested. The time is now. Choose. Return to the fire. Before your lamp runs dry, before the door is shut, before the name you heard in the dark is the voice you can no longer find in the light. And if you walk away from this message unchanged, don't say you weren't warned. The Serene Bible has been whispering what others scream. And if a whisper cuts you deeper than a shout, maybe that's mercy. Because a whisper reaches the ones who still have ears to hear. A whisper humbles the proud. A whisper reminds the weary that He still speaks. And He's still waiting. This seed has been planted. It will grow. It will haunt you in holy ways. It will reappear in dreams, in moments of quiet, in the middle of worship you thought was casual. It will call your name in the dark, again and again and again. Subscribe. Not for me, not for this channel, but for the vow you're making in secret. Let it be the first step back. Let it be the line in the sand. Let it be the yes you've been postponing. And if you walk away, if you scroll past, if you return to noise and numbness, know this: your soul knows the truth. And one day, your regrets will echo louder than my words ever could. Return to the fire. Before fire is all that remains, return to the fire, because He's still calling. And this time, you heard Him.